Welcome everyone to a new GM game where we take a look at former Grandmasters games from the past. We're going to be covering all of the world champions, and I thought the first one that we should start with, though I know he's not a world champion, would be Paul Morphy. If you hadn't checked out my first two videos, please go take a look at those. I had posted those quite a while back, but I want to get this series started again and start posting more of my analysis of some of Paul Morphy's games. Now this is game 3 in round 1 of the American Chess Congress in 1857. This game was played back on October 8th. Now, I know the date looks funny for those of you that are in the United States, but most of the other places they read this as the 8th of October, so the formatting might be a little bit different. I am using a newer version of ChessBase now, so what's interesting is I had the Kindle version of this book, which is written in descriptive notation, and the first two games I actually manually converted over to Lichess, and that was very difficult to do. So if any of you have experienced descriptive notation, it's rather interesting and difficult to deal with. So I was doing that manually, and then I had the bright idea to go check ChessBase in the mega database, and these games are there. So I'm going to start doing them all from ChessBase, which I thought would be much easier. So again, this is game number 3 from games that are in the Morphy's Chess Games book by Reinfeld. So let's take a look. All right, so the game starts out E4 by James Thompson, and Morphy plays E5, knight F3, and knight C6. And here's where we get a chance to see whether or not we get a Ruy Lopez or an Italian game, and we'll see how it goes from here. And bishop c4, we get an Italian game, or a Guccio piano. I know some people pronounce that a little bit differently than I might, so if you have a different pronunciation, bear with me. I don't know all of the pronunciations all that well, but let's take a look. So Morphy responded with bishop to c5, which is pretty standard. Some of the issues that you might run into are the fried liver attack, things like this, so we have to be careful. If we just play kind of like knight to f6, it can get a little dicey here, and now we have to deal with this square with these pieces kind of coming up on it. I am curious, what are the other color? Do I have other colors? I might have to look into that. I'm not extremely familiar with all of the nuances with the newest version of ChessBase, so it's quite possible that I am missing something here. But so we do have to be careful of that. So instead, the best move is to play bishop c5, and here White has a few number of options. Now, what I usually like to play is go into an Evans Gambit and play b4. That's what I play from the white side, and if we take a look, this is what it looks like. You temporarily sacrifice this pawn for activity with you get a quick c4 or c3 and then d4, and then you can go into an Evans Gambit that way. However, that is not what actually happened here. We played bishop c5 and Thompson played c3, expecting a quick c4, d4. Now, Morphy responded with knight f6 and d3, solidifying that pawn on e4. Now, there's a number of ways that you kind of can proceed here. A lot of times you might see castle, you might see things like going after this bishop with some ideas of maybe bringing the pawn up to a6 and then to b5 to kick the bishop back, and then a quick knight a5 to attack the bishop. But Morphy didn't do any of those things. He just simply played d6, protecting his pawn. It's a pretty common position that you'll probably see in the Italian lines quite a bit. If you do play the Italian, you'll probably see this quite a bit. Now, it's a little bit passive from White's point of view. You should be playing for d4. Now, that's tough to do in this particular instance, but the move order kind of stopped things. Now, I typically like to play for d4 as quickly as possible because it gives you the best intention for fighting chances. But okay, let's continue on. Thompson played h3, stopping the knight or the bishop from coming, or the knight coming in. Maybe we do, there we go. So we can do this. Oh, we get a couple different colors. Okay, very cool. So stopping the knight from coming into this square here, I got to find out what all the colors are. I'll have to play around with that. If you know, let me leave some comments down below and let me know what some of the key sequences are in Chess Base 17. I'm not familiar with them, so I have to learn them. Morphy developed his bishop to e6, and Thompson played bishop b3. He did not want to trade that off right away. And now, as you can see, Morphy has a lot of spots on d5. And as you can tell, or as you may have expected, d5 is played. He's got a grip on the center and can actually force some trades. We traded off the e pawn for the d pawn. We're going after this bishop, and Morphy is, obviously already ahead in development. As you can see, White's got these two pieces that still aren't developed, and Morphy has all of his pieces developed. So Morphy really understood the value of developing your pieces. So take notes from Morphy and develop your pieces as quickly as you can. Castles, pretty standard stuff. And then bishop to g5, pinning the knight to the queen. So we have to be careful here. Peels that bishop off, takes, and we have h6 challenging the bishop. The bishop moved back, and g5. And now again, the bishop has to move back one more time. And now Morphy has, or Thompson has a little bit of a threat. This particular square is attacked by two pieces, so it's only being defended by one. So we have to deal with that. Oh, that's not the move. Apologies. Let's delete that move, delete this variation. So he decided to play e4, which is the most testy move, and tries to trade off queens. Now the knight's under attack, and this pawn here is pinned. So Thompson doesn't want to trade queens, it appears, and I can tell that by the notation here, but Thompson played knight e5, trying to possibly disrupt the queenside by taking this knight and destroying the queenside pawns. He takes that off, trades, bishop takes e5 here, and then now Morphy has a passed pawn. So this is going to be a very difficult pawn to deal with. Morphy trades that off, Thompson trades off the knight and dislodges the queen from the protection of the pawn, and Thompson gets the pawn back. So now we're kind of moving into endgame territory where it's a 3-on-3 and a 3-on-3, so it's quite even. Now Morphy's a little bit more developed than Thompson is, and he can quickly get his rooks into the center with moves like this and this, attacking the queen. The queen has to kind of get to some sort of safety, and this knight has a little bit of trouble getting into the game to a really good square because the pawn is on c3. So let's see how it continues. We played rook a to d8, attacking the queen. It's a really good tempo move. And when I talk about tempo, that means a lesser piece, a piece of lesser value is attacking a piece of greater value. So the piece with the greater value either has to block, or it has to move out of the way, or it has to take. Now, obviously you don't want to trade a queen for a rook. So Thompson has to move his queen, and we'll move his queen to c2, preparing the idea of bringing the knight here like that. Okay, rook f to e8. Now Morphy has these two real nice ranks here, or files. Ranks are left and right. And he plays b4. We got to move the bishop back because it's attacked by the pawn. Bishop b6, knight a3. He's trying to get activity here by maybe possibly bringing his knight into this square, c4, going after the bishop. And yeah, queen f4, and this shows a exclamation point, which is advantage to black. So I don't know what the evaluation is here. However, at least as far as the notes are concerned, it says advantages to black quite a bit. Mainly because there's a lot of pile up on this square here, and once the rooks come in, this is going to be just so difficult to deal with. So rook a to d1, challenging the rook, and c6. Now there's another variation here that's marked a6, queen to c1, queen takes c1, trading queens, and rook to e2, knight c4, and bishop a7, hanging onto the bishop, giving that bishop a square on a7 to tuck itself behind. And this still shows advantage for black. However, I don't believe it's as good as the line that was probably played with c6. So now he can reroute the bishop to c7, and now there's a mate threat. So lots of things to think about for Thompson. Rook to d3 is marked as a mistake. He probably should have played queen to c1, trying to trade off a pair of rooks or the queens, and we get this line here. And as you can tell, the pawn structure for black is much better, and it's going to be very difficult for white to kind of progress with these two pairs of doubled pawns. And it would continue something to this effect here, and this shows advantage to black. The king can freely walk forward and try to gobble up some of these pawns, while the rook is taking care of these other pawns on the back on the 7th rank, and white's rook really doesn't have any squares. So, all right, back to rook to d3, and bishop to f2 is an exclamation point. Now, the advantage is most certainly swaying further for black. Morphy is pulling ahead as terms of eval. Instead of taking, he just moves out of the way. Now, if you play rook to f takes f2, we get rook e1 check, rook f1, and rook f1 mate, or queen f1. Actually, queen f1 does not equal mate because the king will then have an escape square here. Whoops, sorry, not being able to paint very well. There we go. So you need to play rook f1. So for those of you that thought maybe you could play in this way, we'll just add a new variation here, you can see, and then the king would have an escape square. So yeah, you could be like, well, Nick, what about coming back? Well, you could come back and then come here, and now the king still has some escape squares. So not nearly as good as just plain checkmate. So the king moves, and we get rook takes d3, queen takes d3, rook to e3, and the queen has a check here out on d8, king to g7, king to d4, offering up the queen trade, and Morphy happily decides to take that off, and Morphy protects his bishop because he likes it there. Knight c4. Now Morphy forces a trade of rooks and goes into this favorable endgame. And we'll kind of push through this really quickly because there's not a lot to discuss here. But mainly this bishop is so much more powerful than this knight, and Morphy is able to go through very quickly. And as you can see, the king and the bishop are just so much more dominant than the knight and the king. And there's not a lot that Thompson can do here. He just kind of escorts this pawn down to be able to queen or trade off the knight, and then he'll be able to come over here and get these other pawns. So this is where the game ended, in resignation by Thompson. It would have probably finished maybe. There's really not any moves because the next move, Morphy is going to just play here. So if he moves his king, he's just going to queen the pawn and trades, and there's nothing Thompson can really do. So, all right, if you like that game, please let me know and leave some comments down below. It really helps me out, shows me that you like this sort of content and you would like to see more. Anyways, we'll catch you guys in the next episode. Thanks for watching, everyone, and have a great day.